is the Banner Ravens podcast. Paul Mancano and Jonas Shaffer live on a Saturday in August to break down the Ravens preseason win over the Dallas Cowboys 31-13. We are going to do our stock up and stock down. Got some exciting rookies to talk about, as well as how about a breakout game for Devontez Walker. And then on the stock down side, saw some ups and downs along the lines of scrimmage. We'll break that down as well. But first, Jonas, we do have to get into the breaking news, which we heard from our own Giannahan, who has their boots on the ground in Arlington to cover this game. And straight from the words of the head coach, of the mouth of the head coach, John Harbaugh, Adisa Isaac, who was injured in the first half of this game, outside linebacker, second-year player out of Penn State, has dislocated his elbow and will be out a few weeks. This is a bummer for a guy who had injuries last season, came into camp healthy, was looking stronger, was looking better, was hoping to get some run in the preseason as well as the regular season. And now it looks like he may be in doubt to start the regular season on the initial 53.
Yeah, I guess the operative words there are out a few weeks at least. And what we are 2.5, or I guess we're now 3 weeks away from the opener. So it's conceivable that he could be ready for that first game. And listen, even if he's not quote unquote ready, I think based on the Ravens' depth there, I guess if you're counting on him playing special teams, then you could say that his not being totally healthy in week one would be an issue. But I think he's pretty firmly behind that top four of Dafeoe, Kyle Van Noy, Tavius Robinson, Mike Green. So I think, he would have been a candidate for a healthy scratch if he hadn't been healthy, or if he had been healthy for that week one game. Obviously, we're all just kind of wildly speculating right now about just what exactly the roster will be, what exactly Adisa's health will be. But it's a bummer because he got hurt pretty early in that one, it seemed like, in this game tonight. Looked like it happened on a kickoff, I believe. And then what you saw from David Ojabo trying to surge ahead of him, trying to cement himself in that depth chart, in that pecking order, kind of unremarkable. Every time I looked over his way, he was just getting stonewalled by the Cowboys right tackle and not really having a whole lot of answers for whatever exactly that Cowboys right tackle was throwing at him. So pretty disappointing effort from both those guys. Ojabo for just the lack of productivity, Adisa for just the sheer lack of snaps that he got. But, these are the kind of things that happen in the preseason, right, Paul?
Yeah, this is the second week in a row that we're talking about a guy going down with injury in the preseason game. It's again another reminder of why the starters do not play in the preseason for the Ravens. Unlike some other teams, they are very careful and cautious with these guys for a reason. It's because anybody can go down at any time. Last week, it was Bilal Kone, the rookie 6th round cornerback. And this week, it is Adisa Isaac. And just feels like a few days ago, Jonas, we were saying, there was an article on the BaltimoreBanner.com where you can subscribe $1 for 6 months about keeping both David Ojabo and Adisa Isaac and how both those guys had seemed to have made strong cases for roster spots. And obviously a year after you take a guy with the 3rd round pick and Adisa Isaac, you certainly don't want to part ways with him. So he was almost guaranteed a roster spot pretty much no matter what he did in training camp, but he did look better. He was healthier. And David Ojabo flashed at times, especially in that first preseason game. But then it feels like with the injury to Adisa Isaac and the struggles that we saw from David Ojabo, both those guys, unfortunately, take a step back. We also did get some news from the mouth of John Harbaugh, which is that the Ravens at this time, now we are a couple weeks away from finding out what the initial 53-man roster is, but the plan is to go with 4 running backs on the initial 53. That means that second-year, 5th-round pick Rasheen Ali appears to have made the team. He got a lot of run in this game. Keaton Mitchell did not get a snap in this one. Ravens wanting to keep his legs fresh. Obviously, Mitchell will make the team. So will Justice Hill and so will Derrick Henry. But Rasheen Ali appears to have made the Ravens. Jonas, what do you think?
I'm surprised. I think, I trust John Harbaugh usually. I think this could also be a situation where, he said that the plan right now is for the Ravens to carry 4 running backs. And maybe what changes that is some kind of trade offer. I don't think tonight would be the kind of night that if I'm Eric DaCosta, this isn't the highlight tape that I'm selling to Rasheen Ali to get a late round pick back. If you're if you are actually looking to keep just 3 running backs, I think, he was fine as a running back. He averaged, I believe, under 3.5 yards per carry. So nothing too special there after the promising start. And then as a receiver, there was the drop that led to the interception. As a returner, as a kickoff returner on that opening kickoff, again, it's easy for me to do Monday morning quarterback stuff, but he lets that kick drop into the end zone, and because it landed in the landing zone and it goes past the goal line, the Ravens get that at the 20. There's no opportunity for any kind of significant return. So was that a mistake? Who's to say? But at least kind of give yourself a chance for a marginally better return than what you would otherwise have at the 20. And then as a blocker, there was that play in the third quarter where it looked like he was looking to take on an edge rusher on the side there, around left tackle. He's late to recognize the guy coming up the A gap or the B gap, and the Cowboys blitzer ends up getting home. And the Ravens' only bailout for that play was the Cowboys blitzer knocked Devin Leary in the jaw with his helmet. So this was not a good night, I think, for Rasheen Ali. Doesn't diminish what he could be in this Ravens offense, but it is still pretty surprising that, considering where the Ravens' needs are on offense and defense, that we have this kind of public commitment for 4 running backs. Maybe this means that the Ravens are just taking 9 offensive linemen, which again to me is a little bit risky. But this is something that I'm sure the Ravens front office staff and coaching staff has kind of picked over the various iterations of what exactly, if we're assuming it's a 25-25-3 breakdown, offense, defense, special teams. I'm sure they've done the math, and I'm sure they'll continue to do the math.
Yeah, Rasheen Ali finished this game with 19 carries for 62 yards. That's 3.3 yards per carry. Also had 1 catch for 10 yards. And Jonas, I think this is one of 2 things. The first is the possibility of a trade, like you hinted at. Maybe this is John Harbaugh signaling to the rest of the league that this guy is available to come and get. And the second thing is, I don't think they want to part with a guy that they took with a 5th round pick a year ago, in case that he is scooped up by another team if he doesn't make the initial 53-man roster. But it certainly does open the door for the Ravens to go light on offensive line here. And sure, Rasheen Ali has flashed at times. There's a reason they took him with a 5th round pick a year ago, but Derrick Henry's going to get the vast majority of carries. Justice Hill is going to be your passing down back because he can block and because he can catch out of the backfield. Keaton Mitchell is going to be your lightning in a bottle. He's going to get 5 carries a game and average 7.5 yards per carry because he'll break one. I don't know where Rasheen Ali fits into the puzzle here unless you are considering special teams. And like you said, Jonas, he didn't exactly shine in that realm today. So we'll see as to whether Rasheen Ali does end up making this roster, but that's what John Harbaugh indicated to the media earlier tonight. All right, let's do our
and Paul, before you move on, there was, I guess, we're obviously doing this mid press conference, mid media availability, all the way in Arlington, but Harbaugh did acknowledge that Keaton Mitchell is dealing with a little bit of a hamstring injury. That not something that he believes will keep him, would make him unavailable for week 1. He thinks that he could be back as soon as this week for I guess, next weekend's preseason game against the Commanders. But obviously, given Keaton's injury history, even given Justice Hill's injury history, I can understand erring on the side of caution. But I think, in a lot of ways, you could probably be safer by just sticking a running back on your practice squad. And if either of those guys, or if any of those top 3 guys are unavailable, you just, call the guy up on game day and you say, we would much rather have the flexibility that way, as opposed to losing a spot along the offensive line or wide receiver room or whatever. So I guess that's something to monitor as we, kind of get ready for what is basically the final dress rehearsal for that Commanders game. Like, is Keaton actually out there? And if so, how's he look?
Yeah, let's do our Who's Got It Better Than award, because Jonas, this week it goes to 2 guys. They're going to have to split the award. I don't know if it's a couple guys get it for a few days and the other guys get it for the next few days, or whether they just keep it at the facility. But yes, it is a real physical award. No, it's not. It goes to a pair of undrafted rookie defensive backs, Keyon Martin and Reuben Lowery. We've spent some time on this podcast talking about Reuben Lowery, somebody who can bounce back and forth between the cornerback and the safety spot, somebody who has flashed a lot in camp, and at a position at safety where you don't have a whole lot settled behind your two starters, Reuben Lowery was making a strong case, and he improved that case tonight. Interception at the end of the first half. He was playing single high safety just after the Ravens had given the ball up to the Cowboys. Cowboys are looking to punch it in right before halftime. Reuben Lowery just perfectly reads the eyes of the quarterback, Joe Milton III, leaps into the end zone and makes a fantastic interception. At this point, for Reuben Lowery, I mean, he has done nothing other than show that he deserves a spot on this roster. And then Keyon Martin, more of a cornerback than a safety, made a fantastic play in the first half. Cowboys' first drive from inside their 5, pursues and tackles Miles Sanders in the backfield for a tackle for loss. And then the very next play, 5-man rush, Zach Ord dials up the blitz, totally unblocked, and Keyon Martin gets home for the safety, bringing down Joe Milton. And then the next drive allows a completion to Jalen Tolbert on the sideline for 5 yards, and then picks him up and plants him in the ground. Somebody who's 5'9", 170 pounds, showing that he has a lot bigger size than that. He did commit a penalty in the third quarter, illegal contact, which gave the Cowboys 5 yards and a first down. But Jonas, Keyon Martin and Reuben Lowery trying to make decisions difficult for Eric DeCosta on roster cutdown day.
Can I be the asshole who says that neither of those big plays was all that impressive? Like,
Jonas,
the interception was launched right to him. He did a great job of, spinning from the too high to the single high, but that was basically an arm punt by your boy, Joe Milton.
Yeah, the Joe Milton stock definitely took a hit. I'm not sure. I'm still his one of his fans, but yikes, there were some rough moments in this game.
And then the 5-man pressure package was, perfectly orchestrated so that the guard or the guard or center picked up the other guy as David Ajabo or whoever it was on the left side of that that pressure package drops into coverage, and it was just completely unmarked. So Joe Milton, even though it wasn't exactly from his blind side, didn't see Keyon Martin coming. So credit to them for making those plays. I'm sure they'll get a helmet sticker or a nice grade from the Ravens assistant coaches, but they have made more impressive plays in training camp, and they'll probably need to continue to make more impressive plays in that game against the Commanders to have any, especially Keyon Martin, to have any chance of making this team. Obviously, a little bit of a paradigm shift, I think you could say, with Reuben Lowery, because we did not see Bo Braid until the second half. Maybe this is just kind of a, we got ourselves a cook-off where it's Reuben Lowery as the de facto bulk of the first half starting safety, even though Malachi Starks obviously started in this one, and then they trade off and Bo Braid gets the majority of the reps against the Commanders. But, a lot of times you can read between the lines about when guys come onto the field, who they're playing with, and the fact that Bo Braid was MIA for that first half, while Reuben Lowery was, again, continuing to move around the field, usually playing safety, sometimes lining up in the slot. That could be a little bit of a guideline into where this coaching staff feels about where they are in that pecking order. I still think the surest thing of those two guys is Bo Braid's special teams ability. He was, I think, like 6th or 7th last year in just total special team snaps, despite missing, I think, 6 or 7 games. So you get a sense for just his activity and that continuity and the value that the Ravens should be putting on special teams after just how garbage they were last year. But it does raise the question about just how close those two guys are and whose nose might be ahead of the others right now.
Yeah, and last week we broke down the defense and who could make it, where the Ravens could go heavy, where they could go light. And at that point, we were expecting perhaps the Ravens to go a little bit heavier at the outside linebacker, at the pass rushing group, and then split basically 11 roster spots between the cornerbacks and the safeties. I think the Adisa Isaac injury has the potential to change a lot of this, and especially if he's not back for the start of the regular season, whether the Ravens decide to add a body there, if they go especially light there and go more in the defensive backs, who's to say? But definitely strong performances from both those guys, Keyon Martin and Reuben Lowery, even though Jonas was not all that impressed. Stock up on the offense, though, Jonas, got to talk about the Tez breakout season, which continues to roll along. Devontez Walker, 6 catches for 61 yards. He was invisible in the Ravens preseason week 1 win. Obviously, we'll keep in mind who is throwing him the football, and we'll talk about the quarterbacks in just a bit, but didn't catch either of his 2 targets last week. This week, it seems like Todd Monken said, Cooper, if you do one thing tonight, throw the ball to Devontez Walker. Was targeted early and often, got 7 targets the first 2 drives by the Ravens, finishes with those 6 catches for 61. His very first play of the game is a nice catch over the middle for 17 yards. Jonas, Devontez Walker continues to impress. He's looked great in training camp. He's pretty much a lock to make this roster. And it's great to see from the 4th round pick out of UNC a year ago that he is steadily making progress.
Yeah, I'm right now looking up the Ravens stats from the preseason last year. He had 0 catches on 2 targets in the opener. I don't think he got a single target in that win over the Falcons. And then in week 3, I think it was also similarly barren for him. That blowout loss to Green Bay, he had 1 catch for 4 yards. So I believe that's correct. I believe he finished last preseason with 1 catch for 4 yards on maybe 4 targets. And he had more than that. He had more targets than that in the first quarter, the first half, just Saturday night. So the growth that he's shown is extraordinary. I think it's, for some reason, I found myself thinking about like the Kansas City Chiefs when I envisioned what his role could be. I still don't know how big that role would be in this offense, considering all the other mouths to feed. But like, the Chiefs last year, they couldn't really make fetch happen with what's his face, their rookie Xavier Worthy last year as a downfield threat. So they turned him from a guy who would run verts to a guy who would run horizontals. And I think we've seen that from Tez in camp. Like, he has been a big play guy, but not as much, I think, as you would imagine for a guy with his deep speed and his bigger frame. But if you can get him just kind of running in a straight line across the field rather than down the field, then that can also stress defenses. And I think, he only, I believe, had just the 1 catch over the middle tonight. But I think you got a sense for just what his speed can do to opposing cornerbacks. Like, if you get him a runway and you hit him in stride, then he's not a super explosive after the catch guy, but he's like a dude with legit 4.3 speed, and that could be exciting in certain areas. And then you have to respect his deep speed enough that opens up those comebacks and those speed outs and the things that he was really connecting with on Cooper Rush tonight that are just kind of like layups for a quarterback who's going to trust him to be where he needs to be and hit those landmarks. So exciting to see him. Like, I've gotten to know Tez a little bit just from talking to him this summer. Great guy. Obviously, he doesn't really have any bitterness about just how that rookie year went for him, where it was not just the fact that he wasn't playing at the start. It was after, Zay Flowers went down and Rashad Bateman was hurt in that game against Buffalo. He wasn't seeing the field in these incredibly high leverage spots. So for him to be a guy who is, the talk of the preseason game, and I think based on what the Ravens are asking of him on special teams, seems like he could be a game day active rather than, kind of being in that purgatory of being on the team, but not being able to actually play in games because you're not good enough on special teams or good enough on offense. It's exciting to see just what this guy's trajectory is after, I think, a year that probably had a lot of Ravens fans, imagining him that he was damaged goods at that point.
So when you talk about using these guys, using Devontez Walker as an east to west guy, somebody who can come out of the backfield or get the ball on like a jet sweep or something like that. I mean, we see Zay Flowers in that role already. And I feel like that also is a spot that LaJohntay Wester, that's a role LaJohntay Wester could play as well, because he has quickness, he has speed. He's not exactly the most polished receiver, but you can get him out in space, get him with blockers in front of him, and he'll be able to maybe make something happen like we saw with Xavier Worthy last year in the first game of the season last year. But LaJohntay Wester is one of my stock down guys because he did not catch any of his 4 targets in this game, had a drop on the Ravens' second drive. Ball was in his hands, just let it drop to the turf. Third drive, he's targeted by Cooper Rush on 3rd down. Maybe they're looking for a back shoulder throw. I don't know exactly what the plan was. Rush seemed perhaps hurried when he threw that ball, but it ends up being a pick six. Defensive back takes it the other way. And then he's targeted again on a deep throw over the middle, had absolutely no separation for a guy who is incredibly fast and quick twitch. It didn't seem like he stood out in this game. And a week ago, we were singing his praises as maybe this is the Ravens punt returner that they've been searching desperately for. And he can bring some game breaking speed in that spot. But I think he also showed that he has a long ways to go to be a productive wide receiver.
Yeah. And you mentioning him as in his special teams role, it does, again, kind of bring me back to the roster construction where are we really talking about the Ravens dedicating 2 spots on the 53-man roster of this team with a lot of young talent that they would like to keep? One for a guy who's not going to do anything but return punts, and one for a guy who might not do anything but return kicks and maybe be like the emergency third string back if Keaton Mitchell's hammy is more problematic than we think it is. That's a little bit where I have some holdups about what exactly the plan is for this 53-man roster at large. But obviously these are kind of champagne problems. But to your point about Wester, like drops have been an issue for him throughout camp. It's him and Malik Cunningham who I think have hurt themselves the most with just untimely drops. Like it's not just in the team drills where you're kind of having to process everything in front of you and all the traffic as the ball zips through just a maze of guys. Like he's dropped passes in one-on-ones, and that's really disappointing. I don't know if John Harbaugh was asked about that pick six. I would be kind of curious for his breakdown, or maybe if we get Todd Monken this week, exactly who was responsible for what in terms of the allotment of blame. Like watching the replay, it looked like Cooper Rush should have seen that cornerback had outside leverage on that play, and the ball ends up being thrown to LaJohntay Wester's outside shoulder. It was obviously also thrown with, I guess, the misbegotten understanding that Wester would turn as soon as he got to a certain landmark. And of course that didn't happen, which allowed that cornerback to, read Cooper Rush's eyes, drive on the ball, come up with the ball. And LaJohntay didn't really have much of a chance for breaking it up. So, not really all that promising. And I think otherwise it did kind of sully what was, for me at least, just watching again from my TV on my couch, a pretty good day for Cooper Rush. Like he otherwise took care of the ball. The other interception wasn't really his fault. He was trusting guys to be where they were. I think he made some good throws to the sideline, good throws over the middle, didn't have any problems with the pre-snap operation. So, you would hope that this is just something that these interceptions are something that he has to get out of his system. But obviously the fact that he does have 3 interceptions now in these first 2 games, despite only playing about 3 quarters total, is a little bit of a red flag.
Yeah, 20 for 30 for 198 yards, 1 touchdown in those 2 picks, passer rating of 68.5 for Cooper Rush. I mean, what did you think of his overall day? You thought it was pretty solid. I mean, do you feel any better about that backup quarterback's back spot after tonight that you did a few days ago?
Not really. I just, again, nothing new here, but as soon as Lamar's done injury wise, then the Ravens Super Bowl hopes are kind of cooked. Obviously it's just that space of Lamar being done for the year versus Lamar having to miss a couple weeks because of a minor injury, whether that's a sprained ankle or a bum hammy, and just how much do you trust Cooper Rush with the bounty of weapons that he should have in front of him? I think the fact that he did, I don't even know if Tylan Wallace played tonight. So the fact that he was doing all this with basically, you could argue wide receiver 5 and Charlie Kohler out there, I think was pretty impressive. Again, I don't know what kind of personnel Dallas was rocking with defensively, but I think he looked better, against this Cowboys defense that, again, to be fair, I believe allowed like 31 points to the Chargers in their preseason opener. So I am interested in going back and looking at the tape when that drops tomorrow, seeing exactly where he did well, where he should have done better. But this was definitely a step up from week 1 of the preseason, which of course is kind of damning him with faint praise.
Yeah, another stock up guy, rookie 6th round kicker Tyler Loop finishes 5 for 6, with field goal attempts, hit one from 51, hit one from 53. Obviously, he's playing in a roofed stadium, so helps to have some distance there. But those kicks were good. Could have been good by 55 or 60 yards. Absolutely nailed them. 2 for 2 on extra points. The one that he missed was a 50-yarder. He did have a couple shaky moments in the kickoff game. To start the second half, he kicked it short of the landing zone. That could have been an instance of him just wanting to try something and it not working out. Ball goes out of bounds, and Dallas gets it at the 40-yard line. But overall, I think we continue to see Tyler Loop pass the tests that are put in front of him. And we obviously won't know anything until the bullets really start flying during the regular season. All I know is I don't want to make Loop there. It is a thing. Nice that those signs were made. I'm not sure I want to use that on this podcast, but overall, Tyler Loop, very good day.
Good enough that John Harbaugh called this competition over. He announced post game that Tyler Loop will be the Ravens' Week 1 kicker, which I think is about as unsurprising as. Come on, Jonas, think of something funny. I got nothing. But again, like the Ravens wanted to have this thing wrapped up by the time that they got to week 3 of the preseason. Obviously, you would prefer Tyler Loop to end this preseason 8 for 8. He's only now 6 for 6, 6 for 8. But one of those misses was from 46 yards. The other was from 50 yards. He's shown the ability to hit a couple 50-plus yarders. So he's doing a pretty good job there. The struggles with the dynamic kickoffs is a little bit worrisome, but also if I were the Ravens, I would comfort myself with the fact that this guy in high school was like an awesome soccer player. I think most kickers in the NFL probably were awesome soccer players, or just had huge legs that lend themselves to playing soccer well. And like the ability to hit the ball into, that 53 by 20 yard area would be something that I think he could access pretty well just from that athletic memory that he has. Obviously, he had 2 issues with that tonight, which is a little bit worrisome. But I think just the fact that this is a guy who has had that kind of athletic success in his life at kicking a ball a great distance into a relatively tight space, I don't think it should be something that's foreign to him. So I think this is, your hope is that this is as bad as it is all season, because you can't be handing possession over to the offenses that are on the Ravens schedule at the 40-yard line. You just can't. But I think if Loop has shown us anything, is that despite how much or how little the Ravens have tweaked his leg swing and everything like that, he's proven adaptable. He's proven resilient. So if it's worked for him on field goal attempts, why shouldn't it also work for him when he's trying these kind of screwball kicks on the dynamic kickoffs?
Yeah. Should give a shout out to inside linebacker Jay Higgins IV. We didn't talk about him last week when he had an interception, but this is the second week in a row where he has made a big play in a preseason game. Undrafted free agent out of Iowa. Had the pick last week, the forced fumble tonight. Jonas, the inside linebacker position is pretty much set. The Ravens took 4 guys on the initial 53 a year ago. If they take 4 this year, there's no shot that Jay Higgins can beat out Jake Hummel for that last spot, is there?
I think it would probably take a lot for Hummel to lose that, just because of what he gives you on special teams. Again, I'm not going to lie to you and tell you that I watched all of Hummel's special teams tape from last year, but they signed him for a reason. And, he is a guy who can play in a different lot of units and lend this group some stability after they lost Chris Board, after they lost Malik Harrison. They need that guy who is proven and a rock steady contributor there on special teams. I obviously haven't dug too much into what Jay Higgins has offered you on special teams, but the fact that he's been around the ball these 2 games, and the fact that the Ravens, I think, take a certain pride in finding these under the radar, undrafted inside linebackers and developing them into contributors, if not outright stars, might, I don't know. I'm not going to say it's going to lead them to make a bad decision, but it might certainly help the case for Higgins sticking around perhaps longer than he would on another team or for another franchise. So, all they can do is just continue to kind of build on the success that he's had tonight. Obviously, you go from an interception in week 1 to a strip sack in week 2. You find yourself around the ball. You're doing a good thing. I think there were certain rough spots for him in that week 1 game against Indianapolis. I believe he missed a tackle in one spot, or I think that was Reuben Lowery. No, excuse me, right. He didn't rack up a whole lot of tackles against the Colts in that preseason opener. I don't think he was, overflowing with tackles tonight. But again, as long as you're kind of reading your keys, doing your assignments, the ball will find you. And I don't think we've seen that play out for the first 2 weeks here.
Yeah, let's talk about some of the other draft picks before we get out of here. Malachi Starks continued to do what he did in the first preseason game, which is not appear on the screen too often, which is a good thing. He did have some nice help on a deep post route on the Cowboys' second drive that led to an incompletion. But other than that, was not targeted a whole lot in the passing game. Mike Green, very good against Dallas's backup left tackle, Nate Thomas. I think he's steady in run defense. We've talked about it before, but for somebody who's not overwhelmingly huge, I think he is just very athletic and he is very good at shedding blocks, and he continues to impress that way. And then Teddy Buchanan, another inside linebacker who is on the right side of the bubble, obviously, as a Ravens day 3 pick, somebody who flashes good instincts, great athleticism. So for between Starks, Green, and Buchanan, the Ravens had some solid performances from their rookie defensive players.
Yeah, I was hoping to see a little bit more from Mike Green as a pass rusher, but obviously, I think Dallas's offensive line is always very well schooled. I think that is the next step for Mike Green, just being a guy who's not just beating up on second string offensive linemen, but being able to overwhelm some of these guys either with technique or with athleticism once he gets to the kind of starters that he'll be seeing as soon as week 1, where Buffalo's bookend tackles are as good as any in the NFL outside maybe Philadelphia. So, I think you obviously want to see that development from Mike Green. I think you're right about Teddy Buchanan. Seemed a little bit more secure in, his reaction to play action. That there was that one play where you could say that he got beat. I believe it was the first quarter, and the Cowboys tight end just drops the pass that Buchanan had mostly covered with his body, but he was kind of close enough that you also want to give him some credit for potentially disrupting that. You just hope that the rest of these guys get through this game healthy and that they are, able to play big snaps potentially next weekend against the Commanders.
Also have to bring back the word of the day, Jonas. You keep trying to kill it, and then you keep giving me great words. This one came courtesy of Ravens play-by-play guy, Jerry Sandusky. Angstrom. It is a unit of length equal to 1/10,000,000th of a meter, 100 millionth of a centimeter, 0.01 nanometer, or 100 picometers. Jerry Sandusky used it when describing the difference between the ball placement and I think he was describing the new system that the NFL has in place for determining where the ball is, the chip that they have in the ball that helps them spot the ball so that they don't have a bunch of guys carrying a chain gang trying to figure this out. But excellent word. Had you used angstrom before, Jonas?
I didn't even know how to spell it. I think I spelled it with an E. But I'm glad you bring up Jerry, who's obviously a legend. I think with the wave of loop there it is that we will see this year, that we will hear this year. The reason that I was asking you offline about the meme where it's appropriate, inappropriate, it's the woman yelling into her phone, calling for HR.
Sure.
I do think that the kind of the line of demarcation, or like the mark of how good an announcer is, or how much schmaltz or corniness an announcer can get away with, is basically, can you do loop there it is and not have like every neutral NFL fan groan upon hearing it? Like, I don't know, can Kevin Burkhardt get away with that? Can like Ian Eagle? Absolutely can. Kevin Harlan absolutely can. But there is a certain point, and maybe we should spend one of our preview podcasts just nailing down like all 12 NFL teams and their play-by-play guys, which guys, when they do a loop there it is, are you just groaning because they do not have the sufficient riz or the sufficient gravitas to pull it off?
I love how you use both Riz and gravitas in the same sentence. I don't know. That might be the first time anybody's ever used both those words in the same sentence. If you're watching live on Facebook, YouTube, or X, you just saw the meme flash up on the screen that Jonas was describing. Otherwise, audio listeners only, I'm sorry. You're just going to have to make a mental picture of that. Yeah, it's a good question. I just wonder about the viability, about the long-term viability of Loop. There it is. I mean, they're very much, the family is very much trying to make it a thing. I just don't know if it's going to catch on. I don't know if enough people were watching the second preseason game on a Saturday night in August and recognize that this is a thing and want to carry it on to the regular season, or if this is just going to go by the wayside.
The Ravens do you know the hip hop / pop rap duo who's responsible for Whoop? There it is, Paul.
I don't know.
It's Tag Team. They are
okay.
An Atlanta-based duo. So unfortunately, we will not get the Ravens playing in Atlanta this year, which would be a fun meetup between Tyler Loop and these elderly black statesmen of hip hop. Who knows? Maybe the Ravens bring them out to Baltimore one of these days. But yeah.
I mean, if they can appear in a Geico commercial where they were saying "Scoop, there it is," then maybe we can get them up to Baltimore at this point. I'm not sure what else.
One of our great recent commercials.
Exactly. Any other things you wanted to discuss before we get out of here? Any other shout outs? Any other disappointing notes? I think I had in the notes here, Jonas, about Joe Noteboom. Speaking of notes, somebody who, the Ravens signed to be a swing tackle, a backup offensive tackle lineman this season. He didn't really impress me in this game. And for fans who maybe want him to sneak his way into the competition at right guard with Daniel Falele, he didn't really handle left tackle very well tonight. Second drive allows a free rusher to the quarterback, allows a quarterback hit that almost ended in a turnover. Cooper Rush just basically pounds the ball into the turf, but got beat on an inside move. And then 2 drives later does not allow a sack, but I think a quarterback hurry when he's put on his butt by an edge rusher. Not exactly a strong performance from Joe Noteboom in this one.
The pancake was against Carson Benson, I believe. I think Joe Noteboom played just the two series at left tackle. I believe that first series was him allowing the second and long pressure, and then the third and long pressure. It looked like he had some good blocks as a run blocker once he moved over to the right side. I think Noteboom has had generally a pretty good camp, so I'm not going to make too much of a big deal about this. I can't tell you that, it's not like he was going against Micah Parsons out there, so you're a little bit iffy about exactly the caliber of talent. You're just kind of searching the guy's name who rushed for the Cowboys on that third down pressure. It looked like he is a bubble guy, so it's again, he's not really someone who I think is locked into being a contributor on that Cowboys defense. So again, you worry a little bit about that there. Carson Benson, again, he has these highs, he has his lows. The pancake was definitely a low, but then you see him start to figure things out during the game. You see him being able to kind of pick up stunts and twists and not get great push in the run game, but at least be competitive, at least be the first guy downfield when, Rasheen Ali or Dearness Johnson or Miles frickin' Gaskin breaks into the second level there. So it was, a bit of a mixed bag there at the tackle spots. Obviously the first quarter into the first 5 minutes or so of the second quarter were pretty bad, but I think Vincent steadied things out there a little bit, started to figure things out there. And you just hope that, game 2, it seemed like was better for him than game 1, which was a very low bar. And you hope that game 3 will be also better for him than game 2 was.
Yeah. And this is just what you signed up for when you took somebody out of Alabama A&M with a 5th round pick who has the size, he has the ability to play along the offensive line, but it is going to take a little while. And your 3rd round pick, Emory Jones Jr., is still sidelined with a labrum injury. So this is just the world that they are living in at this time. The backup offensive linemen are not exactly the strong part of the Ravens roster at this time. Any other shout outs that you wanted to give out, Jonas, before we get out of here?
What did you think of, because I think we've seen it, if you've watched enough NFL preseason, you have seen the digital chain review, the digital chain gang. To me, maybe it was just the production of the Ravens telecast, but it all left me a little bit wanting, not only just in terms of how long it actually took for us to get resolution on a call that wasn't all that close, but the fact that, it's like there wasn't a lot of magic there, because if you're at the stadium, you see like the chain gang move back before the call is announced, or you see the coaches react as they're informed of the call, and then they make the call to the crowd, and everyone goes wild, or everyone boos. But to see Zach Orr just bouncing on the heels of his feet, and the entire sideline getting pumped like 10 to 15 seconds before they actually confirmed that this ball was in a foot and 3 inches short.
Yeah.
I appreciated the specificity of that as a journalist. It's very cool that we know, like, for the record, just how short these inexact measurements in these games that require and deserve a lot better measurements are. But that whole charade, it just felt it felt kind of second rate in a preseason game, which I guess is par for the course.
Yeah, it's preseason for everyone. I'm willing to see how it works when it's a nationally televised game and it's an important call. If they can get that a lot quicker, that'll be important. They can get it right down to the angstrom, Jonas. They can get it right down to the 1/10,000,000th of a meter if they need to. I don't know if that's official or if that's just Jerry Sandusky trying to give the NFL more credit, but I'm willing to give it some time. But certainly it was not the best of. At least they didn't get the call wrong. I'll say that.
Yeah,
we'll see how the rollout goes.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. All right. That just about does it for our show tonight. At Jonas_Shaffer is his handle. I'm at Paul Mancano and at All Banner Sports. Our own Gianna Hahn has boots on the ground coverage from Texas. Follow her at Gianna_Jade anywhere that you get your social media posts. And of course, subscribe to the Baltimore Banner to get plenty more coverage. We will be back at some point later this week to look ahead to the Ravens' final preseason game against the Washington Commanders. In the meantime, subscribe to the Banner Ravens podcast anywhere that you get your podcasts. Write us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, and I will read it out here